It's appropriate, it's important. I want to get it done expeditiously so we can move on to the reconstruction.
The commuter crisis, the bridge, that continues. Senator Jack Reed was up with the Federal Highway Administrator, and today the senator is on with us.
Holding the powerful accountable from Washington, D.C. to right here in southern New England. This is 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti.
And good morning, everyone. I'm Gene Valicenti. Senator Reed was supposed to be with us in studio, but he's on standby in Washington to vote on Ukraine and Gaza aid, possibly this weekend. So he's dialing in from Washington. Senator, thanks and good morning to you. You look good and we're ready to go here. Senator, let's begin with the news from last night. The president was on the defensive following that really a scathing report from the special prosecutor who handled the classified documents case. It was good news, bad news for the president. The good news was he won't be charged. He took the documents, he stored them in a sloppy fashion. But the prosecutor went on to say that I probably couldn't get a conviction because the president is an elderly man with a terrible memory. I'm going to read for you the quote. We have also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury as he did during our interview of him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Wow. Prosecutor said when I interviewed him, he couldn't remember when his son died. He couldn't remember when his vice presidency ended. This is bad stuff, Senator. What do you make of that? Is he up to the job of the presidency? A lot of people say no after that.
Well, the legal precedent that the prosecutor rested was lack of evidence, so not the capability or the personality of the president. It was a lack of evidence. And also he contrasted it with the Trump case, which was much more serious, and he indicated that those charges were indeed credible and should be pursued. The president is someone who is managing a huge array of problems. In fact, we should realize that that interview took place the day after October 7th, when Hamas brutally attacked Israel. So I don't think the president was sort of hanging around getting ready for his interview. I think what he was doing, and what he's done so well, was trying to support one of our closest allies, trying to diffuse a situation that could be, if it escalates, catastrophic. And that's just the normal day in the president. Well, I've been with the president. I've been with the president in person. I was at the meeting of all the congressional leaders, the speakers, the majority, the minority leader. It was intensive, and no one walked out of that room saying he can't handle it.
Right. Senator, I know you're friends with the president, you support him, you're a leading Democrat, and I expect you to say that. But you're not going to say that that was a good report from the special prosecutor. He said he has a failing memory. He couldn't remember the date his son died. He couldn't remember the day his vice presidency ended. And last night it wasn't a good outing. He mixed up the president of Mexico with the president of Egypt. And he went out right away to hold a news conference to defend himself. Let's listen to that. It didn't go as planned. Listen to this, Senator, and then we'll have your reaction.
I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business.
Senator, the president has made it the country's business. He brings up his son's death, painful as it is for him, and uncomfortable as it is for all of us to hear that. Nobody likes to hear about his son's death or share a man's pain. But he brings it up all the time, Senator. So was the prosecutor within his rights to ask him about it? Go ahead.
Well, I got to tell you that that I know the president well, as you indicate, and his son's passing was extremely traumatic. And when you put all those factors together, the pressure of the office, the attack in Israel, and then prosecutors sort of asking you about when did your son die, that's out of the box. That's not good prosecutorial technique. And frankly, I've listened to Donald Trump confuse Nikki Haley with Nancy Pelosi, and that to me is a little startling. So this issue of identifying people and knowing dates, et cetera, I've been there with other colleagues on both sides of the aisle, with the president, talking about issues of huge concern to the nation, and everyone walks out of the room saying, you know, he's got a real insights, he understands what's going on, et cetera. And he has that capability, but he will make miscues. We all do.
Yeah.
But there's no one, I think, that has more of a grasp on what's going on and more results. We've got an infrastructure bill where we're rebuilding this country. We've took on the energy companies and the pharmaceutical companies for the first time successfully. We're lowering the cost of prescription drugs for Medicare patients. We are building across the country. With the CHIPS Act, we are not only investing in this country, but we're actually creating more private investment to match the public investment. These are accomplishments that are not an accident. They're because of the president and his staff working 24/7 to protect this country.
Senator, you have a good command of the facts. The question, does the president? 3/4 of the American people, according to recent polls, say he doesn't. He's not up to the job. How is it that your view is so out of step with the polls and 3/4 of the American people who say he's too old? How is that possible?
I think there's something to be gained by being working with the president, and not on a partisan basis, but with my Republican colleagues also, negotiating with him, also recognizing the incredibly talented team he has put together, because the presidency is certainly not a one-person job. It's fusing together an organization that works for the American people. He's done that. I think, frankly, anyone at that age, people would say, gee whiz, is he or she capable enough to do it? And then without, dodging the question, he has made misstatements. But as I indicated, so has Donald Trump. I think the image of Trump is one of, well, what do you expect? The guy's a wild, uncontrolled, says anything that comes to his head. The image of Joe Biden is this is a very experienced president and senator. That's an unfair situation, but that's the situation.
I know you're anxious to pivot to Donald Trump, so let's do it. The special prosecutor said no charges filed against the president, even though he took the documents and he shared them and he had them and he stored them sloppy. That's not the case for Donald Trump. That's a different special prosecutor. Trump will be charged criminally with those papers. And some people say that's a different standard of justice. Why for Trump and why not for the president? Is it fair? Now, you're a lawyer, by the way, and you went to a good law school. You went to a good law school. Is it fair to say they both robbed the bank? One gave them back and one didn't? Isn't punishment for robbing the bank, Senator? Is that fair?
No, well, let me tell you, the special prosecutor that looked at the Biden case specifically indicated the differences between the Trump situation and President Biden. Trump deliberately went out of his way to deny he had the papers, to obstruct justice, to make false statements or urge others to make false statements, to make modifications to his security of video systems so they could not track where the papers were, where they went, etc. So this is not the, gee, I was a little too careless about taking papers, but here they are. They're all back. I want them secure. This was the Trump situation was one of, I make the laws, that's Donald Trump. I declassify. I can do whatever I want, and no one's going to interfere. And when the FBI comes knocking, I'm going to tell them, I'm going to lie to them, basically.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Yeah. Senator, isn't it clear, though, that they both took the papers? They both thumbed their nose at the rules. I took it. Biden took it. They stored them sloppy. One in the garage, one in the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Trump kept them. He didn't cooperate. Biden gave them back. But isn't the crime taking them? As I said, isn't the crime robbing the bank? Whether you gave the money back in the end or you kept it. Go ahead, take the last word, then we'll go to break, Senator.
Well, no, you have two prosecutors. And by the way, the prosecutor looking at President Biden was a Trump appointee, I believe, or a Republican. And he stated from the very beginning, we don't have the evidence, one. Two, he said, let me distinguish clearly the case between President Trump and President Biden. President Trump consciously, deliberately, with intent, not only took papers illegally, but tried to prevent the FBI and the federal government from retaining those papers, did it multiple times. And this is a serious, I mean, the issue is it's obstruction of justice. It's not just having papers in your possession. And that's a much more serious charge, as both prosecutors indicated.
Senator Reid, stay with us. We'll take a break. When we come back, let's talk about the keep Trump off the ballot in Colorado case. The Supreme Court looks like he's going to rule in Trump's favor on that. Plus, your nominee for the federal district court in Providence. Stay with us.
Thank you for turning to 10, your news leader. 10 News Conference with Gene Valicenti continues right now.
Senator Reid is with us from Washington. Senator, let's continue with legal circles and politics. The Supreme Court appears, from what we're hearing yesterday, poised to keep Donald Trump on the ballot in Colorado and telegraph a message to any other state thinking of keeping him off the ballot. Don't do that. Would you agree with that ruling?
Well, I think such a ruling would be appropriate. First, you have to have an objective measure of what it is to be an insurrectionist. Otherwise, every state could come up with their own definition, and we don't have one now. As some pointed out, had the president been impeached, then they could use that standard. In fact, he would not be allowed to run for the presidency had he been successfully impeached. Well, you need a standard. And related to that, the issue that judges on both sides of the spectrum brought up was this gives states sort of power to, for any reason whatsoever, keep people off the ballot. And that is not going to help us in terms of having free and fair elections. So my sense is that the court, probably on a close to 9-0 ruling, will in fact throw out the Colorado case and allow access to the ballot. But I think what they'll also do with the pending case on immunity, be very, very clear that the president is not immune from criminal charges, that he's not above the law. That's the principle that the court, I think, will in fact stick to. They must, because no one should be above the law in the United States.
Yeah, could you just refine that for us? Because he's claiming immunity for acts while he was in office. And has the appeals court said, well, I can't hold you immune now because you're not in office anymore? Can you make that clear for us, what you believe to be the case?
Well, had he been in office when these charges were brought forth, the only real mechanism in our legal annals is impeachment. And then had he been successfully impeached, or you could argue even unsuccessfully impeached, when he became once again a civilian, for want of a better term, maybe those charges could have been pressed. But what the court has said, and the circuit court was unanimous and very, very convincing in their opinion, was that the reality here is that the president cannot, as he becomes a civilian, avoid the consequences of illegal action.
Right.
I mean, if that was the case, literally the president could order people to go out, shoot these people, and come back in, pardon the killers, and then say, hey, I'm fine because I have total immunity. I can do anything. That's so un-American and so dangerous that I believe the court, I hope the court will decide appropriately.
All right, let's stay with the courts. You nominated Rhode Island State District Court Judge Melissa Dubose for an open seat coming up on the federal district court in Rhode Island, the courthouse on Kennedy Plaza. It's the federal bench, and you believe she's qualified for that. She had her hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it was a bit of a bumpy road when Senator Kennedy got a hold of her and got a hold of an interview she gave about 20 years ago to an undergrad where she used the term "my Marxist phase." I want you to, well, you're probably familiar with the exchange yesterday. Let's listen to it and then I'll let you comment, because she's your pick. You get the recommendation. You and Senator Whitehouse put her name forward. The senator rubber stamped it, and she got it going over yesterday from your colleague, Senator Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana.
Are you still a Marxist?
Thank you for the question, Senator.
You don't have to thank me. We'll say you are welcome.
I am not, nor have ever been a Marxist.
Well, you gave an interview in 2000 to the Feminist Press. In fact, you didn't turn it over to us. We had to ask for it. We found it on our own. And you did then turn it over to us. And this is what you were describing your time working in a coffee shop. You said, quote, the kids would come into the cafe all the time. We'd talk about what they're doing. We'd talk about their classes. And I was in my Marxist phase. So you used to be a Marxist, but you're not now?
No, Senator, if I may, the context of the first of that interview, I had no idea that that interview was something that was going to be published.
Just to clarify the record, Judge Dubose, do you recall when that interview was done, the interview that Senator Kennedy referred to?
No, Senator, I don't. And if I recall, and I was brought to my attention yesterday, that was never an interview that I did that I thought was going to be published. I never reviewed it. I didn't. It was an undergrad student who was interested in teaching, who spent 20 minutes.
What were you doing at the time?
I was teaching.
So this was before you even went to law school. This was
Yeah, I was
many years ago.
It was, Senator.
Perhaps during the time when my colleague, Senator Kennedy, was a Democrat. Showing that people can change their views, even if it were true that you were then in a Marxist phase.
By the way, Senator Kennedy, who has a very good sense of humor, he's known for his comments and his sense of humor. He did not appreciate that. I thought he'd take the bait, but he didn't, and it was kind of a buzzkill. Did you nominate a Marxist to the federal bench? Senator Reid?
Absolutely not. I don't think there are that many Marxists that graduate from Providence College. The Dominicans have a rather dim view of Marxism. This is a Rhode Island person. This is someone who grew up here, who understands the state. She's got the unanimous endorsement of all of our sitting district judges. She has the strong endorsement of the chiefs of police of Rhode Island. She is a remarkably capable woman. Now, he probably could have went back and said, were you ever a hippie? And, you know, she went, yes. Well, are you still a hippie?
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of, I would call non-productive questioning that is too frequent here these days. It's more of a gotcha.
Right.
Let's go back 20 years. Let's find out something you said as a young person. And frankly, Gene, I think we've all had phases when we were more progressive, less progressive, when we're doing this. It's nonsense. She is so qualified and recognized by the courts, recognized by her fellow lawyers. She's going to do a remarkable job for the state of Rhode Island.
All right, just with 30 seconds left before we go to the break, he did question about her experience in the federal courts, whether or not she's presided over a case. And that appears to be a more legitimate area of inquiry. She is light with her legal experience in the federal courts, Senator. Would you give him that at least?
No, I think we look at her entire experience. You know, she has worked for she's worked for the state attorney general. She has been in private industry. She was with a Global 500 company, so she knows what it's like in the corporate environment. She's now on the district court handling a lot of criminal cases and arraignments, and she brings all those skills to the court. That's what makes our district court, I think, the best in the country. We had Judge Smith, who is retiring, was not a federal jurist. He came from private law firm practice, counselor. Judge McConnell, the chief judge, came from as a litigator.
Yep.
And I think we put together a court that really understands the law, not from the perspective of just sitting there judging, but being among people who they will have to deal with.
Senator, you're down there in Washington. You may be voting on billions more for Ukraine. You support sending Ukraine billions more. Putin was on with Tucker Carlson last night saying, just stop sending money to Ukraine and we'll end the war in days. Go ahead and take those two.
Well, Ukraine is fighting their fight, but it's our fight too. If Ukraine falls, it will not stop Putin. He will become more and more adventurous and aggressive, and that could easily pull us into the battle directly. The Baltic, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, they're NATO countries. If there's any incursion in there, then under Article 5 of the NATO treaty, we would be involved. I would rather send resources to brave Ukrainians to fight than to send our young men and women to fight. It's that simple. And also it's about, will we maintain the international order of democracies united together, of free trade policies, or will we descend into autocracies around the globe who exist simply to make their leader and his colleagues rich and powerful? I don't think that's where we want to go. We would be betraying the sacrifice of millions of Americans over many, many decades who fought for freedom and prosperity and peace. And so that's why I'm very much committed to getting these resources to the Ukrainians.
Senator, I'll defer to you on global politics and military affairs. But just as a layman, Putin appears to have trouble conquering Ukraine. He's on the ropes, from what I hear. How would he ever have designs on Poland or taking on NATO? That seems absurd, Senator. How's that possible?
Well, it's very possible, because if we do not supply the Ukrainians, they will literally run out of ammunition. They are now under great pressure. Russia is a huge country that can throw, unfortunately for the Russian soldiers, men into combat and without regard. Putin has no regard. And they can wear down the Ukrainians, and they can make sufficient progress that they could cause an unfavorable settlement or even the collapse of the Ukrainian government. And that would give him more interest in going after places he claims are Russian territory, like the Baltics, like other parts of the area. And, oh, by the way, if he succeeds, you have to think what Xi Jinping in China is thinking. I have a goal to take Taiwan because it is Chinese territory, just like Putin's goal was to take the Ukraine because it's Russian territory. And that would weaken us across the board. NATO itself, I think, would begin to second guess whether the United States will play the role it's always played, saying, we're going to be get your back, we're behind you. And that would cause, I think, a terrible dynamic. So this battle is much more than just struggling to help the Ukrainians who deserve the help, but this is about our long-term security and safety.
Senator, we only have about 30 seconds, and you're at a disadvantage. I could see you, you can't see me, and you can't see that the computer just put up a warning that we're running out of time. But it gave me a reminder that when it's up, and you get cut off, and we're done. So with just 30 seconds left, you were up with the Federal Highway Administrator. We need money to fix that bridge. Are you satisfied that everything is going well? It's the big story up here. Are you satisfied with Peter Alviti helming this? He's your old classmate. You went to high school with him. Just take about now 25 seconds and wrap it up in a hard out, Senator. Go ahead.
They're working 24/7, both the state authorities and the federal authorities, to first determine what must be done and second, get it done as quickly as possible. This has been a huge imposition on the people of Rhode Island and the businesses of Rhode Island. My job, and I'm already engaged, I've been talking to Secretary Buttigieg, is to make sure that every federal resource available goes to the state to fix this quickly and at the least disruption to the people of Rhode Island.
So you're satisfied with the way it's being handled thus far?
I think it's an all-out effort by everyone, and we've got to keep it up.
Okay. Senator Reid, thanks. Always good to check in with you.
Thanks, Gene.